Hi, this is Nathan Loop, and this is the second in our video series on Git and GitHub and how to use those as a network engineer. In our first video, we talked about what GitHub is, kind of a high-level overview of the different aspects like a staging area, commits, your working branch, which is a timeline. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to actually use it on a command line, just on your local computer, just Git by itself, not using GitHub. So here we are on the command line, and GitHub projects are called repositories, and those are a folder. So we're going to create a new folder for our new repository, which is a project. So let's create a folder called new repo, and let's go into that, and then let's do git init. Or I'm sorry, first, before we do that, the very first thing you want to do when you have a fresh Git install, and you're only going to have to do this one time, is you want to tell GitHub who you are. So you're going to do git config, doesn't matter where you do this from, global, which means it's going to apply everywhere, user.name, and then in quotes, your username, or your name. And then you want to do the same thing except user.email, and you want to do this with your GitHub email address if you're going to be using this on GitHub. Okay, so now that we have that done, you only have to do that once. Let's go ahead and create that first repository we were talking about. So let's do git init. And what that's going to do is it says it initialized an empty Git repository in the folder I'm working on, and then this is it actually created this subfolder called .git. .git is where the actual heart of the Git repo is going to be. That's what makes it a Git repo, and that's what, say, Visual Studio Code will look for when it's working with Git repos. We don't have to ever work with that. It's just there. So what we have to work with is the actual files. So let's create a file. So let's just echo some text to a file. New file. And let's send that to file1.txt. Okay, so now we have a file called file1.txt, and a command you should become familiar with is git status, and that's going to tell you what's going on. So it says we're working on our master branch, we haven't had any commits, and we have an untracked file. What does that mean, untracked? Well, if you remember back to our first video, GitHub had multiple steps in the process, where first you had that staging area where you get all your files work in your working area, your staging area, and when you're ready and you say, okay, these are good changes, then you take that staging area and you commit it to your branch, to your timeline. So this is saying that it's untracked, it's not in our staging area. So we want to add this to our staging area. So how do you do that? Git add. And here you could either do file name, or if you just want to do the whole folder, which often you do, you can do git add dot, and that'll do the whole folder. And now when we go back and we look at git status, you see it turned from red to green, and it says that we have changes to be committed. So now we have our staged files, and we want to commit them. So to do that, you do git commit, and you always want to give it a message, just a short message, so that when you're looking back, you can say, oh, okay, that's what that change was. So let's do first commit message here. Okay, so now we have a commit. So let's create a second commit just so we have more of a timeline and not just one item to look at. So we are going to create a file2.txt, and then so if we look at git status again, you're going to see that we have another untracked file, file2.txt. So let's git add. I could do the dot, but I'm going to do file2.txt. Okay, so we have that. And now git status shows it's ready to be committed. So we're going to do git commit. And let's change our commit message to second commit. Okay, so now when we do git log, we're actually going to see that we have two commits in here. So we have a log that we can look at, and you're going to see those two commits. And this is a little bit messy, I think. I like to do git log -- one line, and that's actually going to show it to us on a little bit cleaner view. So here you're going to see, and if you remember back to that last video, I said your timeline, each commit in it was a 7-digit hex code is how I kept track of it. Here those are. And then we have our commit messages. So we have our first commit, our second commit. So let's go ahead and edit a file and do one more commit. So let's do vim file1.txt, new file This is an edit. And let's go ahead and save that. So now we have saved our file. And here is a key point. So remember before when I added that file to the staging area? If I look at git status now, it says that file 1 is not staged. Every time you commit, your staging area is reset. It doesn't save files in the staging area. It resets it back to nothing, and you re-add them back in. So that way you don't end up with files that you don't want to be committed. So you have to actually add them back in. So let's add that back into our staging area. Git add dot. We'll add the whole folder here. And now when we do git status, it's ready to go. So let's do git commit. Oops. Git commit -m third for third commit. Okay, so now when we do git log one line, we see we have 3 commits. So now let's go back and talk about undoing changes, right? Because having all these there is great, but what if you actually want to undo them and go back? How do you do that? So we had those 2 things we talked about. We had revert and reset. And so what you do there is, if you remember, reset was going to take our changes and just undo them all together and get rid of them. And git revert is going to take an old change. So say we want to revert back to the second change, it's just going to take that and just put it right on top there and make a 4th change. So that's the safer way and the way you generally want to do it. So let's go ahead and do that. So we want to do git revert, and then you want to do M1. I'll talk later about what that is, but let's just put it in for now. It's for when you're working with branches. And then we want to give it that the code of what we want to revert to. So we're reverting to that git one right there, the second commit. And it's saying, okay, when you reverted to, or when you committed this the first time, your message was second commit. Do you want to keep that message as your commit message? Yeah, I do. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now when I do git log one line, there we go. So you see we had our first commit, our second commit, and our third, but then we have our second back on top again, but it has a new code. So we didn't lose any of our changes. We just took an old version and made it current again. So that's the right way you really want to do it generally. But if you're confident, if you just think, oh man, those changes are useless, I'm never going to need them, I want to reset, I'm embarrassed about what's in third. So let's get rid of that. So then you can do git reset hard for a hard reset. And then you want to copy that right there and then paste it in again. And so now we're going to do a hard reset back to that second commit. Maybe it didn't like the caps lock on my hard. Okay, there we go. So git reset hard and then our message. And now when we look at git log one line, all those other changes are gone. So they are completely erased. So we have our git revert, our git reset, and we created it with git init. And what else do we look at? We looked at git status to see what is untracked, what is in your staging area. Git add is going to add things to your staging area, and git commit is going to take them and actually commit it to your working branch or your timeline. So that's a quick overview of some of the command line features of Git. There are certainly some other ones out there you can dig into, but that's going to get you started and kind of get you a feel for Git and how it works on the command line. In our next video, we're going to take these same concepts and look at doing them in Visual Studio Code, and also look at moving away from just working on a local repository, and we're actually going to put it on github.com, and we're going to keep our repository there so other people can see it and we can work with others. Hope to see you there. Thanks.